Many entrepreneurs and business leaders have a lot of valuable information in their minds. But what if you could use an AI technique to get that information out of the minds of founders and key employees and turn that information into a digital asset that makes everyone in the business more productive? And moreover, what if you could use those digital assets to power agents and AI systems? Well, you can with an AI technique called RAG. Hi, I'm Joshua Ebner. I'm a 20-year expert in AI, machine learning, and data science, and I help entrepreneurs and business leaders grow their companies using AI. So in this video, I'm going to explain a little bit about what RAG is. RAG means Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and it's an AI technique. I'll explain a little bit about how it works, and then I'm also going to explain how entrepreneurs and business leaders can use RAG to make people in their business more productive. Let's get into it. So first of all, what is RAG? As I said just a second ago, RAG means Retrieval-Augmented Generation. Let me kind of break that down. What we do with RAG is we take information, usually unstructured text. It can be things like books, documents, emails, contracts, playbooks, anything. And I'll get into why that's useful in a second. But we take unstructured text and we store it. We store it in a very specialized database called a vector database. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on what a vector database is right now, but essentially it's a very special kind of database that stores unstructured data, especially unstructured text. And it puts it into a format that is relatively easy to retrieve. Now, traditional databases are more like Excel spreadsheets. They're row and column data stores where you have rows. For example, a customer database might be customers, and the columns would be things like their name, their address, or the products they've purchased in the past, things like that. But that sort of database works really bad for unstructured text if you're storing things like documents. It makes it very hard to store it, but more importantly, harder to retrieve, meaning harder to use. But a vector database, you can store unstructured text and then retrieve it. But why is that important? Well, if you can take that unstructured text and store it, you can later on retrieve it and use that as a sort of augmentation to AI prompts. So let's say you have an AI system like ChatGPT or a similar large language model. You write a prompt that usually has information in it, a sort of question that you want answered or a task that you want it to perform. But ideally, you also want to give it additional context. Typically, you want to add enough context to a prompt that it can generate a good response for you. So with Retrieval-Augmented Generation, we're retrieving information from that vector store with all that unstructured text. We're retrieving the right pieces of information from a vector store, using that information to augment a prompt to a large language model. And then that enables the large language model, the AI system, to generate a better answer. Retrieve, augment, generate. Retrieval-Augmented Generation. RAG. Now, why does this matter for a business? I kind of hinted at it, but I'm going to explain a little bit further right now. Think about all of the information that's scattered around a business, not only in the mind of a founder or key employee, but also in things like hard drives, different folders, laptops of different employees. I'm talking about things like policy documents, proposals, contracts, SOPs, meaning standard operating procedures, maybe conversations if you're recording things like sales conversations. And if you're not, maybe you should start sales conversations or maybe meetings. Think about all of the unstructured information, unstructured text that's sort of scattered around a business. How valuable would it be if you could access that information much more readily and then use that to power prompts to large language models like ChatGPT, or even further, what if you could use that information as a sort of digital asset to power an agent? This is exactly what RAG allows you to do. So RAG, if you use it correctly, enables you to get that information, get it out of the minds of various employees, take it from the scattered places that it lives in various parts of the business, and it allows you to centralize it and turn that knowledge into a sort of digital asset. So hopefully it's kind of obvious at this point how this can be valuable, but let me paint a picture. Imagine you have all of that information, your standard operating procedures, your policies, contracts, conversations with customers, conversations with vendors, conversations with employees, all of that stuff in a vector database. Now, there are some complexities around who gets to access what pieces of information and all of that stuff. Setting aside some of that complexity, imagine you have that. It enables key employees to document their way of thinking, their processes, their decision-making frameworks, etc., and offloads it into a digital system that other people can get access to. And what that does is, let's say you have a founder that has high value work and lower value work, and they would like to take some of that lower value work and offload it maybe to other employees. But the other employees don't have that information yet. What RAG enables them to do is take that information, the decision-making frameworks, policies, procedures, etc., offload it into a digital system that those other employees can then access. And it helps them start to behave more like those founders and higher level employees. So in some sense, you're sort of offloading the key valuable information, putting it into a digital system that enables lower level employees to access, and it sort of starts leveling them up. That frees up the founders and other high level employees to do the most valuable work in a business. This makes the business more productive, and higher productivity helps scale the business without more headcount. Furthermore, you get a lot more consistency with work, so people aren't making mistakes and there's a lot less rework. Ultimately, you get scalability, consistency, productivity, and on final analysis, a sort of leverage. And one more thing, RAG systems are actually a key input to most AI agents. AI agents are a whole separate thing and they're kind of complicated, but AI agents have a sort of LLM in the middle, and then they have access to things like databases and vector stores and RAG systems, and then other tools like APIs and access to other software. But RAG is a key input that gives an AI agent access to all the things that I already talked about: contracts, SOPs, policies, procedures, decision frameworks. So in the long run, if you start putting your information inside of a RAG database, you can use it to power an AI agent that can act more like an artificial employee. This enables more leverage and more scalability in the long run. So how can you get started? Although I will say that setting up a vector database and a RAG system in its entirety can be a little bit complicated, and you might want some help from a professional. You can get started by identifying key processes, key decision-making frameworks, and key knowledge in your business. You want to identify those things and start writing them down. This was important even before the AI era, because you would typically want to write that stuff down and just create a document. For example, a process, you'd create an SOP, and you could distribute that to your employees. But now you want to do that stuff because it's going to help power a RAG system. So you want to find that key information and knowledge in your business and start documenting it. You also want to maybe consider recording certain conversations. Now, I understand there's all sorts of privacy issues around this, but if you get consent from your employees and from your vendors and your customers, you might want to start recording things like business meetings and sales conversations. Same thing with policies. If you have, let's say, a HR policy or a culture document, many great entrepreneurs actually recommend, like the founders of Netflix famously have a culture document. Maybe you want to write that stuff down. Put it down on paper, because if it's in a text format, then you can put it into a RAG system once you're ready and start getting value from it. So that's how I would get started. Start documenting all the valuable processes, procedures, policies, etc. in your business, so you'll be set up when you're ready to actually start building an AI system. And when you are ready, you can contact a pro and get some help. What do you think? Have you heard of RAG? Have you tried it so far? Have you gotten stuck? What are your questions, concerns, problems? I want to hear from you. Leave a comment.